Welcome to Kickstart Your Weekend, where every week, hopefully, we try and bring some excitement to and anticipation, of course, to your gaming hobbies. Got a couple of really cool projects to talk about today. Very different in their approach. One that really harkens to the old school stuff that I still enjoy in terms of role playing, and one that kind of embodies what I'd like to try and bring to the table, both as a roleplay game master and even just in terms of wargaming. If you're excited by those projects, please let me know. Please hit like, please subscribe and tune in. Next week we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff as well. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. We are live, so yeah, please keep that coming in. And what else can I say? But with Devious Dungeons, Foreboding Forest, and the coolest cats, cat singular this time round. My name is Phil, and welcome to the Dark Orb. How's it going, everyone? I hope you've had a really great week. I'm so pleased that it's the weekend, and I hope that you're all very relaxed, and that if you aren't working this weekend, that you have a really fun time. If you are working, then I hope that you have as good a weekend as you possibly can. There's been a lot that has happened over the last week, even just in terms of role-playing stuff. There's a lot of news. Wizards of the Coast have made some really big announcements about their line, about things like D&D Beyond. But actually, that's not what I want to talk about before we crack on. There was some really awful news. Tove Gillbring sadly passed away, and she was very, very important to the hobby. As you can see, I'm a little bit choked up. Yeah, she kind of, with Anders, her husband, was really, really fundamental with the Swedish role-playing scene. And by extension, that's really pulled into what we now have as contemporary role-playing today. Sleep well. Anyway, let's crack on. We got a couple of really cool things to talk about, and I'm going to waste no time in diving in with the role-playing game to talk about today. And that is, in fact, something that I hadn't heard of before. A few of my friends have backed this already, and I was not sure until I read a little bit more. It's very Appendix N, so it's very kind of classic sword and sorcery, which I love. And I really like the intro video, so I think we should watch that together. Let me know what you think, yeah? So let's just dive straight in. Here we go. So, first of all, Swords and Chaos, which is by Blackspire Fantasy LLC. It's their first created game, but it's a group of people. It's actually quite a nice little list of things, and just looking at the art style, I mean, this is very evocative of your kind of your Robert E. Howard, as we see at the top of this page here, the Conan kind of stuff, which I think is great. It's class-based, 7 character classes, 100 background options, 18 homelands, 120 spells, blah, 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 blah. It's really cool. It's a D20 system, and it's not a D20 in the same vein as Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, for example. I'm going to just scroll down to the kind of explanation of how it actually runs, because it's a little bit different, but also very, very similar. You roll a D20, you have a modifier based on your attribute, same as D&D, or DCC, or whatever. And that modifier is -3 to a +3. You add your level, which we see in some games as well, up to 10 levels for your PC. And then if you're rolling against a primary attribute, so like a pure strength attribute or pure agility type attribute, then your target number needs to meet or exceed a 12. Now, I don't know, and that's my failing, I'm sorry, it's been a really long week. I don't know whether that can be modified by the GM. I would presume it probably can be, depending on the difficulty of the task. So 12 is probably your base value, which we see quite often in things like 5th edition anyway. So there's a 15. So as long as you... that demonstration is a 15. So As long as you exceed a 12, then you're golden. You've passed that test, providing that it's modified in some way. If you're rolling against a secondary attribute, so maybe lockpicking as opposed to agility, I'm just pulling that out of thin air as an example, then you need to roll over an 18. So that 15 that we rolled before in this demonstration would be a fail, which is really interesting. It's very, very simple. And if the whole game is as simple as that, I'm a huge fan, because one thing that really annoys me is when you have games that massively overcomplicate. And the attributes, we've got strength, dex, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, luck. I presume luck is going to work very similarly to Dungeon Crawl Classics. And in fact, the book design reminds me of Dungeon Crawl Classics. But I promised we're going to have a look at the video. But before we do, let me just check the comments. Hey, Jason, really, really great to see you. I hope you've had a fantastic week. Yeah, Swords and Chaos, let's check it out. Let me know if you can hear it.
Who
I love
dares
this.
intrude upon my innermost sanctum?
This is so He-Man.
I sense that you are a seeker of rare and exceptional games, yes? I may have just the thing for you. In my explorations, I have seen many strange and shocking things. Among the greatest is a role-playing game inspired by tales of swords and sorcery. A fabulous librum which does not yet exist in physical form, but which might, with your assistance and a bit of your gold. Are you prepared to face the stark madness and uncanny brilliance of swords and chaos? So pledge your allegiance to swords and chaos!
I love that video so much, it's great. So let's have a little look through. First of all, I said hello to Jason. Also, hello to Krista. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you are very well. That's a great question. I'm kind of trying to think about what to bring next to the channel. We've got some Mörkborg coming, hopefully. Morkborg to non-Swedes, or to anyone who really hates my terrible Swedish pronunciation. What else? I do want to get some more cult to the channel. And we're kind of talking about more View Scream. So if you didn't see View Scream, then check that out. We had that on the show a couple of weeks ago now. And possibly some Brindlewood Bay, as well as Call of Cthulhu and maybe some Simbrum. There's only so many hours in the day and we've got lots of plans. But one of those is likely to show up in the next few weeks, let's put it that way. As for games playing at home, not so much at the moment. But we have been playing Tartarus Gate, which is being GM'd by, as a home game, by Neil from Paladin Roleplaying. They make amazing dice. If you haven't got some Paladin dice, then we do have a discount code, 15% off your first order, Dark Orb 15. But Neil has been GMing Tartarus Gate, which is really great. If you fancy a really lightweight story in a single magazine kind of production of a science fiction adventure, check out Tartar Escape. It's cool. We were talking about Swords of Chaos, so let's get back to that. I think this is a really interesting campaign, by the way, Swords of Chaos. We're looking at a book that reminds me very, very much of the Dungeon Crawl Classics book. That's just your standard run-of-the-mill DCC book there. I presume you can see that. I can't see my camera right now. I think it's got quite so many pages. There was a page count somewhere. There we go, 300 pages. So the DCC book, which is pretty hefty, you can see there, that's 500 pages. So it's not as many as that. But the style looks very, very similar. Printer and publisher is Walsworth Publishing. Before we came on air, I meant to check whether or not the publishing house for DCC is in that book. I'm not going to look now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same company. It may well not be. And if you back the project, you get your name in the book. Always a fan of that for some strange reason. It's a FOMO thing. Powered by the Siege engine, developed by Troll Lord Games. So if you play Castles and Crusades, then it's a modified version of that. I hadn't spotted that before, so it's a good thing that we're going through this together now. We've already gone through the attributes. Combat, players and monsters roll a d20, trying to overcome the other's AC, so that's very similar to before. So the skills test we were talking about, we have to get a 12, and that's pretty much what you do in 5th edition anyway. But obviously it's a bit different if you're trying to get a secondary attribute. Initiative is rolled each round. I like that a lot. I'm a huge fan of systems where the initiative changes each round. It's one of the few things I really, really love about Savage Worlds, in fact. In theory, I love Savage Worlds as a system. I think it's a great mechanism. In practice, in play, I find it can be really irritating. That's just my view, and we all know I'm a bit judgmental, so, you know, it means nothing. The settings and the writing for Savage Worlds is second to none. I just find the combat, certainly if you're playing Theatre of the Mind, or if you're playing virtually without using a virtual tabletop, just using Zoom or, you know, some other video streaming service and dice, then Savage Worlds is really hard because it's derived, I expect, or rather I expect that's because it's derived from a miniatures game. So effectively, dynamic initiative I think is really cool. Sorcery, magic is rare and terrible. You can play a sorcerer, but they have a chance of corruption. Corruption is one of my favourite mechanics from Symbaroum. All of my players in my home game are managing to pretty much avoid getting a lot of corruption, but we're still quite early on, he says, having played it for 2 years. We're still quite early on in the campaign. We're taking things slow. But yeah, this idea of corruption accumulating the threat range is great. 1 on a spell check, you are swayed and warped by the monstrous influence of corruption. It's cumulative, gradual decay, and then what happens when you get fully corrupt? You go insane. Transform into one of the Chaos Forms. So that's very similar to Symbaroum. We have, you can transform into an abomination, which either you might, if you're lucky, if your GM's cool and hoopy fruit, they might let you play as a semi-conscious abomination. You may be kept some of your humanity, or they may take over your character and just have it murder everyone. You know, it's hard to say. It depends on your GM. Spells are truly Vancian in a way that few other systems are. Sorcerers have total control over what spells they wish to memorize, and there's no level caps. So that's pretty good. I think it's quite interesting. Let's go over to the comments and see what we're missing. Jason says, hang on, let me just bring that back to, if I do it that way, let's do that. So, Jason says, let me get this up to the top again. That's not very good, is it? There we go. That's lookable. Jason says, very rock and roll. Krista Motborg, I think it's too dark. It can be quite dark, but it doesn't have to be. it's down to how much your GM leans into the horror. So you can actually play it very camp and almost sort of He-Man-like. And yes, the likelihood is you'll have several characters die throughout. Even a one shot, you might go through half a dozen characters. But you can actually have that in a really light-hearted, pulpy sort of way. So if you have your GM keeping a sense of humour with the game that you're running, then it can be fine, honestly. Yes, Bruce, I completely agree. Great to see you. Hope the game comes with a skull puppet for the GM. That would be amazing. Have I checked out Brancolonia? We haven't talked about Brancolonia yet. I can't remember why. I think there was something else on at the time when that was being announced, and I try and keep the number of things that we talk about relatively low and really try generally to focus on things that haven't got huge amounts of hype. Although that's all going to change with things like Blade Runner and stuff like that, because there's no way on earth we're not going to talk about Blade Runner or Old Gods of Appalachia, because they are so cool. Yeah, Andy, I don't disagree. It is very D&D like, but I think it looks like it's a much simpler system than D&D. They haven't put in the 900,000 extra rules, which is what I actually hate about D&D. This doesn't look like it's wargame derived particularly, which I'm fine with. Not feeling very pulpy in the mechanics. Rich, great to see you. Do you mean this game, or do you mean Savage Worlds? Because both are like that. Most of your characters will die. Skeletor will be back next week with more disturbing facts. I really like it. I think it's a lot of potential there. I don't know what the pedigree is for the creators. Let's scroll down to the bottom. We should also have a look at some of this art, actually, because the art is really impressive. So we've got Jeremy D. Farkas. Okay, Tales of the Magician's Skull. That's hugely influential. I think it's Goodman that puts that out. Could be wrong. Ricky Broom contributed to Warlock and Earn Your Crust for Warlock. My apologies. Ian Finch, Big Eye the Unblinking, Non-Polygon, Caden Coates, just plays a lot. Graphic designers and artists, Brian LeBlanc, Carlos Castillo, Billy Blue, Ed Bickford, Corey Furman. You can see there's a lot of illustrators, and let's just have a little dig deep. I'll just make everything bigger again. Whoop, there we go. As to why that is. My streaming product is being a pain in the bum, so I can't see all the way down to the bottom of what everyone's typed, so bear with me. I think this is the bottom one. This game, yeah, I know what you mean. It doesn't seem like it's super pulpy, but the style at least is quite pulpy. I think the mechanics are more pulpy, I would say, than 5th edition, which is not particularly high bar. But if you're wanting to play something that is D&D OSR-esque, but you want to try something a little bit different, you know, there are lots of people who are into this sort of thing. And I really like the art, which is where we're going now. So, lovely map of the world. Obviously not quite the same as our current world map. Hopefully it'll stay that way. And then we've just got some of these really nice, pretty much like plates, aren't they? Assassin. What characters can you play? An assassin, a barbarian, a fighter, a knight, a ranger, a rogue, and a sorcerer. So pretty much your main kind of OSR traits. But I do really like the artwork. I think it's very cool. Stretch goals, no stretch goals. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. We've seen companies fold because they put too many stretch goals in and then they couldn't actually keep up with them. And it's already a hard cover, which is the only thing you really want. Hopefully it's got like a ribbon in there as well. I'm just scrolling through because of the artwork. So there we go. And in terms of the cost of the project, you're looking at £16, $20 for the PDF. I think that's fair. As I said before, I actually think it's really, really important that people charge an appropriate amount for their PDFs, and that's something that's changed for me over the time of the lockdown. And I think obviously Degenesis and the way that Degenesis lost, well, their product line because they were charging nothing for their PDFs. I think that's proven that actually we should charge an appropriate amount for the time, the effort, the artwork, the talent. It's not cheap to put a book together. You know, even just a zine, you know, it's not that cheap unless it's just words and you don't pay yourself anything. You know, and then obviously you've got no guarantee unless you're some superhuman that it's going to be error free. So you at least want someone to proofread it. But yeah, doing these things well takes money, and printing it isn't generally the main expense, from what I understand from friends in the industry. The actual printing is not really much of it. Yes, logistics is, but the majority goes on things like art and layout and that sort of thing. $50 for the print book, £39. I don't think that's unfair. Print and PDF bundle, I kind of think that's unfortunate. I would say that for $50 you should probably get both. Personally, I think that should be fine. It's not really likely that people are going to want one and not the other, or rather they're going to want the print and not the PDF. But let's have a look at the numbers. So yeah, look, 54 backers getting the print and 161 getting the both, and 67 getting the PDF. So you've kind of got it split to an extent. It's almost halfway split between someone buying one or the other, or someone getting both. But oh yeah, and then there's the All Gone is the live one where you get your name in there as a most noble backer, and you get to play in a live game with Jeremy as the GM. Broadcast live on the official Troll Lord Games Twitch. We should write a book. We could do that. It'll look terrible because I've got no money, but right. I can't see all of the comments that come in because there's something buggy going on with the with my browser, which is really annoying. Let me see if I can do that. Aha! Yes, the F in PDF is not for free. I couldn't agree more. So that's Swords and Chaos. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. If you're excited, please hit that like button. If you're not excited, but you like how I've presented the product, hit that like button. I've got some really cold tea, so bear with me. That's tepid. Tea, Earl Grey, tepid. I don't recommend that. Let's talk. Jason, I can provide stick figure art for your book. It'll be bad. And if you're excited but not about the product, give us a like. Let's talk about tabletop miniatures. A few years ago, and I've kind of lost track of when it was. I think it was 2019. Might have been 2018, but I think it was 2019. We went to Salute for the first time. Salute is a tabletop wargaming convention. Currently in London. I think it was at the Excel Convention Centre. And spent a fair amount of money there. Probably a couple of £100. Mostly on stuff that was kind of going end of life. Like I got an Infinity Army that I knew was old when I bought it, and it was like £20 instead of 60. I only wanted it for the minis because I don't tend to play war games, but I wanted those models. Fun fact, I still haven't assembled them because we don't really have a permanent setup for painting and assembling and stuff. So every time we want to do that, we have to take everything off the dining table, and the dining table is my desk. Yeah, it's a bit challenging. So these things have taken a while. Thank you very much, Lockdown, for changing the way we work and making practical spaces suddenly impractical. We came across the Darklands stall for the first time, and I have spent the last probably 3 years referring to the company that makes this as Mierce Minatures. It's not, it's Mierce, as in Mercia, the original spelling. And they have put out like 20 Kickstarters over the last few years. They're quite hard to follow if you're not prepared to take the time to actually read through and dig into what's there. There's a lot of words, and because the product line has now been going for nearly a decade, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's quite hard to unpack. So I thought it would be worthwhile actually talking about that Kickstarter campaign, because they've got a second edition of the Darklands miniatures wargame. Now, what's interesting about Mierce Minatures is that for quite a long time, they were producing miniatures. First, I think first it was kind of the human, like infantrymen and soldiers, cavalry, that sort of thing. They were producing the miniatures, but they hadn't yet properly provided the rulebook, the first edition Darklands rulebook. Rules existed, and I think it was probably a little bit oral tradition, so you kind of have to know someone to understand what the rules of the game are. I think they probably existed very much in Mierce Miniatures. Rob, the guy who kind of created all this, his head, and he was probably communicating these out. That's my understanding. And the rulebook came out 3 or 4 years ago, and they're doing a second edition now. Throughout all that time, they've been bringing out all these miniatures, and there are now so many of them that if you want to jump in on this product, you kind of have to start somewhere. And I've been really tempted for a couple of years to get a starter set, maybe not even to play the game, but at least because I think they're all really cool. And with the games I run, like as I said before, Symbaroum, for example, sometimes it's nice to actually play at a table, have miniatures to represent the things that your player characters are fighting. And there are enough different styles of miniature within this product range that you could probably find something for almost anything that you wanted to represent, even if it's not completely accurate to what you're trying to represent. Darklands itself is a really interesting setting. It's set in, I think, like 650 AD, something like that, but it's not purely around... I'm just trying to bring the shared screen up. It's not purely around kind of factual history. There is an element of that, in that we have several, I've forgotten the phrase, I think it's kins, but basically you have several races that are derived from historical races. So you have, and we'll go through them in a minute because I've got all the PDFs available, we can show them. But you have races based on, or clans if you like, based on Irish, the Scots, Welsh, Vikings, Romans, the Greek, Atlanteans, Fomorians, which, according to what is potentially kind of fake Irish history, if you want to know what I'm talking about, then check out the books by Mark Williams on the subject of Irish gods and folklore. Fomorians were like these creatures that came from the sea and kind of ravaged Ireland. This suspected that it might actually just be Vikings, but it doesn't matter. So it's kind of creatures from the depths. You've got the Cornish are there, the Picts, Saxons. It's so cool. And not only have you got those infantry and, you know, humans that resemble to some extent the historical archetypes of how infantry and soldiers would have been dressed. Of course, it's slightly caricatured because it kind of has to be, otherwise it's hard to kind of see on the battlefield who's who, maybe. But you also have some of the mythological creatures, and I think what they've done is really cool. There's a whole load of miniatures in metal, a whole load of miniatures in resin. I'm kind of going towards resin these days, just because I like the detail and I'm kind of sick of working with metal. But resin miniatures are more expensive, and of course they're more fragile as well, so take that with a pinch of salt if you're going to buy these to play at a table. But let's have a look actually at the campaign, and then let's go through some of those PDFs as well. We've got a bit of time. So yeah, let me know what you think. Keep those comments coming in. Let's make everything bigger. Way! No video here. And actually, I'm going to make this bigger still. There's a lot to discuss in this page. And I will lose visibility of the comments, the live comments right now. So bear with me, I will come back to them. Right, so what we're looking at here is the second edition of Darklands. And basically, you're looking at a new book, a whole load of tokens, some dice. That's kind of the core. I would say this is mostly about pushing for getting that print run out. Don't think there are many new models here. Most of the models have come through with the other Kickstarter campaigns. But as well as the option to grab the rule book for 60 quid. Yeah, I know that's expensive. It's 400 or so pages. In fact, it says here 412 pages. A4 hardback. It's a huge weighty tome. And if the other publications went to go by, the layout is gorgeous. I had a look through the first edition rules, and yeah, they maybe not as elegant as you might want them to be. There's a lot of different actions you can take, for example, something like 40 different actions, I think, that you can take on your turn. But the core of it is very simple. But the way it's laid out is very pictorial, really pretty. They've not spared any expense on the artwork and the photography. In fact, talking of the photography, one of the PDFs I'm going to show you in a bit is it's like the companion. It's like a catalogue, basically, of all the minis. It's not very many pages, and it's a few pages. It's like 200 pages, I think. It might not even be that. We'll look in a minute. It's 850 megs, guys. 850 megabytes. And the thing is, I've got Adobe Acrobat Pro, so I thought, I'll be a smart ass. I'm going to run it through and just using the Adobe settings that you would normally use without going into any sort of fancy professional reprocessing. I'm just going to see what happens if I hit that save as a reduced file size button. And I got it down to 500. But in doing so, the amount of detail that was lost in the photographs was incredible. So, hat off really to Rob, because you've kind of realised that when you're showcasing your product and you want people to see exactly what they're getting, if they don't want to buy the paper version of that book, then I think you've made exactly the right call in just providing the uncompressed version as a PDF, because you can really see the detail. Hopefully we can show that off in a little bit. So yeah, it's a war game. You use tape measures and you chuck dice, and the core simple mechanics are very straightforward and simple. If you've got a bunch of let me just scroll back up to the top whilst I'm talking. You've got a bunch of similar units in your army, and if they're all going to do the same attack, so say they're going to attack another unit with a number of enemy forces, you're going to roll d10s equivalent, I believe, to the number of soldiers that you're attacking with, and the challenge rating, effectively, of what you're trying to hit, I want to say it's called like the strike level or something, is determined by how skillful your soldiers are compared to your enemy soldiers. So, for example, if they are more skillful than you, then your target number on a d10 is higher. That's pretty straightforward. If they're less skillful, then the target is lower. If you roll a 9 and the skill is less than yours, I think, or possibly equal as well, sorry, it's been a while, then you get effectively a crit. And you roll those dice, and all those dice that hit higher than your target number, you keep on the table. They were successful hits. The ones that were not higher than your target number, you just remove. So that then becomes your attack pool, if you like. The opponent then needs to parry to try not to get hit by those. If there was a crit, they can't parry them, so they're shit out a lot there. But they try and parry, and they're parrying basically their dexterity, I think, against your might. And so there is a table that, like with the first thing where you have a target number, there's a table that gives them a target number, based on that comparison of the two units on the battlefield. And if they hit that target number, then the number of dice that have hit that target number, that's the amount of dice that are, or amount of attacks that parried. Any dice that didn't successfully reach that target number, those attacks have fallen through. So then you work out how many attacks are left, because you do a deduction, and the number of attack dice that are left equals the damage, and those damage go immediately onto the, I believe, the characters at the front of your line of troops first. There's a lot of words there. I appreciate we don't normally go into that level of detail, but I actually think it was quite interesting to see how straightforward that is. That's come straight out of the Kickstart, and the Kickstart is available, I'll show it to you in a bit, for free from the Minatures website. It's taken me several years to actually sit down and bother to read it, because I'm not a wargamer. And so I was quite pleased to actually sit down and do that and go, oh, that's all right, that's not bad. So with that out of the way, and they've got 10 days left on this campaign, let's actually have a look. There are a bunch of stretch goals. They're doing pretty well. Look, they're all the way down here. We're very close to fumes and vomit. I mean, that's kind of a life goal, right? You know, once you get over 40, that's kind of basically what you're living for, is fumes and vomit. So, help Measure Minches get to fumes and vomit, guys, girls. Right, and you can see there's a table, it's got some terrain and some minis for each side. And let's talk about what Darklands is. It's a 32mm scale tabletop skirmish wargame where you command the hosts of man and beast that your ancestors once did for glory, power, or simple... That doesn't quite flow right. I probably read that wrong. Fight breathtaking battles on your tabletop with some of the most finest resin miniatures ever created. Okay, I mean, maybe it needs a little bit of editing, but I don't really care. What if dragons really flew in those ancient times and giants really walked the earth? What if berserkers actually were bear men? Man and bear joined together. What if all the myths and legends we take for granted were real? One second. And ancestors fought against and with creatures and beings and realms we thought were nothing more than the fantasies of our uncivilized selves. Sounds fancy. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that, as I said before, it's kind of hard to unpack what this is all about just by going through the campaign. We're hardly anywhere through the page. This is the rule book that you'll get. It's hardcover. It comes with some extra stuff. Then we start looking at starter bundles. And this is where it gets confusing. There are so many, I can't remember if they're called kins, races, whatever you want to call them. Hosts, I think is probably the best term. And you're looking at, for metal, with a starter bundle which has the rulebook, whole bunch of tokens, some dice, some other cool stuff, you're looking at 150 quid. It's a lot of money. That's for metal. £170 for resin. Now, most of these starter things, without the books and without the tokens, etc., they're about £120, £130, I think, on the website, possibly more than that. So 100 says here, it doesn't say here. There we go. Yeah, 130 quid, up to 130 quid in value. So you're paying £130 for your starter kit, and we'll talk about what those are in a second. And then for £40, you're getting the 50 quid rulebook and a whole bunch of tokens and dice. That's not a bad deal if you're actually interested in getting into this and also playing the game, or if you just want the book because it's gorgeous. What are the hosts? So basically you have the option of getting an amount of an army. It's enough to start a game with a mate who also has a host. That's fair enough. You know, there's enough there to start off your battle. It's like any collectible war game. You need a base kind of army, and then you develop that. And this is where it gets overwhelming. Each of these is a different potential starter army, and this is just your infantry. You then have all these ones that are coming soon. You could have one of those. You could pick one of these, and when they finish making it, you'll receive it. Whereas these ones are all already on their website. You could go and order this now and it would arrive when it arrives sometime soon, provided it's in stock. In some of these, the resin is in stock and the metal isn't, or vice versa. But ultimately, those ones are in stock, these ones not. But you also have support hosts. So these are support units, so maybe like artillery or bows or whatever, as opposed to your kind of standard infantry. Then you have monstrous infantry, which are non-human infantry. And you also have mounts, so your mounted hosts. We could probably, let's see if this is going to behave, because sometimes it does not. But if I click on one of these, you'll get an idea of what we're looking at. But again, in fact, it didn't show in that window, but I can come back to it. There we go. As I said, there's so much here that it's kind of hard to see. So we start up with the top, Albane. Then you've got Anglekin, so they're your English dudes. Werewolves, which are cool. And Atalantes, kind of your Atlanteans, you know, from that very well-known Atlantis place. Brythoniad, which I think are the Welsh. Yeah, you can see that. The Byzanti, which are, I believe, the Romans. The Arain, which is the Irish. And so on and so forth. The Fomoraic, who are very cool, kind of demon creatures. And you've got the Chthons, which are kind of dragony people, and the Jutes, who are, I think that's the Danes, isn't it? I'm kind of challenging myself now. Norse, we know who the Norse are. The Islans is actually, these are the Cornish dudes, but you wouldn't know it. I mean, you know, I have been to Cornwall. I don't remember them quite looking like this. So that's an idea of what we're looking at, just in terms of the standard starter sets. And there's a lot there. I'm just waiting for this page to load again. There we go. So there's a lot. And then we're looking at as well the tokens. So this is part of the stretch goals. There's a whole load of tokens. I think they are their MDF, which is great. Normally you end up with these being bloody cardboard. But no, they're MDF. And you have kindreds and realms. That's what we were talking about earlier. So you have the Anglekin, for example, which is actually the Masher, Bionica, Dera, Eophora, probably. It's all very small on my screen. Atalantes, Brythoniad, Byzanti, etc., etc. So there's a lot there. More tokens, tokens. So, and blast templates, and spray templates, and crash templates. You get a lot. Then you have options for add-ons for books, etc. I think it's really interesting. Let's have a little look at the PDFs, if you don't mind. I think these are really cool. Let's just jump onto that now. So, window, that's the one. So what it recommends in the actual campaign is that you have a look at the PDFs that are available from the Minatures website. So I thought it would be worthwhile just showing you what they are, because there's not a lot available out there on YouTube. So let's treat this as a little bit of a 101 from someone who hasn't played the game, because it's probably better than nothing. You have a What is Darklands. It's like 10 pages or something. This basically gives you a really, really high level idea of what the game's all about. And you've got your units and your commands and the host. And it gives you a map, which I really love. I actually think this is nice. As you can see, Atlantis is where we expected it to be. So it's a bit different. But yeah, so your Atlanteans and your Chthonians come from here. And then you can get an idea of where each of the different realms are with regards to those characters and the armies that we've got. So it's very, very simple. That's the What is Darklands PDF. I wouldn't bother with it unless that map doesn't show up elsewhere. It probably does. I can't remember off the top of my head. So skip that. I would say it's worth, if you're interested in this game, grabbing this. You can buy this print for $4.99. or the PDF is free. So grab the free PDF and then grab the Kickstart as a print if you're likely to play it and you don't want to spend 400 pages, which is a unit of time as far as I'm concerned, 400 pages reading the rules, the full rules, which of course is going to include, I'm sure, plenty of fluff and world building as well. This gives you an idea of what you need. You need friends, you need a battlefield. No battlefield is ever big enough, but 4x4 is what's recommended. I don't have a 4x4 table in this house right now. When we move, maybe I will, but right now it would be a challenge. What you can do is you can get collapsible picnic tables. We've got a couple of those, and they're actually 2x4. So you could get a couple of those, which we've done in the past, put them side by side. If you're going to do that, I actually recommend getting a couple of bits of 2x4 MDF particle board, something like that, quite thin, putting them over the top in the opposite direction, because then you can get a perfectly flat surface. Throw a tablecloth over it. Then you've got a wargaming setup where you don't have annoying little ridges and everything. So it's worthwhile if you've got the space and you've got the money to just do that if you don't have a permanent table large enough. You need some stationery, a tape measure, some D10s, 10 D10s, and then 1 D10 of a different colour, because you also, I forgot to mention this, you roll initiative, and roll initiative is done with percentile dice. And then warrior profiles, you can get your warrior profiles with QR codes that are on the, I think they're in the rulebook actually. So yeah, you move and attack, you can shoot, there you go, and then you move the initiative to the other player. Talks about basically the mechanics, and these are the tables I was talking about, one up here and one further down here for shooting, attacking and parrying. It tells you how to do those movements, and there are flying units, so you might fly rather than walking, and I'm sure there are exceptions to the rule, like you probably have some artillery, ballistas, that sort of stuff probably exists, and certainly mounts are going to behave in a very different way. But that's the Kickstart. It's only a few pages, but you can get an idea here. I mean, you know, $4.99 is a lot of money for a Kickstart, but this is really pretty, and I'm convinced they won't kind of spare any expense in the actual production. I'm just going to catch up with the live comments, so bear with me. Going back to the fumes of vomit, and back it. Yep, I mean that's just everyone these days. Everyone harps on about Atlantis, but I think of it, I get a sinking feeling. But I knew I left Atlantis somewhere, so that's where I dropped it. I'm awash with Atlantis jokes. Oh dear, just a drop in the ocean. What have I let myself in for? Right, that is the Kickstart PDF. It's free. Check it out if you're interested in the game. What else do we have? The Lands of Darkness. This is a really cool PDF. Again, I think it's also available in print. Double check. This one tells you quite concisely what each of those kindreds and realms are. So, for example, the Albane are the Picts, so they're in Scotland. Well, you know, that's what we would consider now as the Scots. And I think maybe we're being a bit stereotypical here. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, actually, when I do this. Let me move my window a little bit. Yeah, you can. Maybe not all Scots look like this. I don't know if we've still got Bruce watching, but I'm sure he'll make a comment if he is. I'm Irish, so you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's all fair game. But yeah, you have those, and they overwhelm with a horde. So basically, they're a horde army. So you have large volume of angry. I mean, we've all seen Braveheart, right? So you know that kind of never take our freedom and all that sort of stuff. And they recommend an infantry starter host, the Duguth infantry starter host, if you want to go with them. The Anglican. This doesn't look like it's actually showing up properly. Let me see whether or not there's something. Oh no, I'm sorry, I was looking at it wrong. Each race is one page, and I hadn't spotted that. So the Gerlom infantry starter host for the Albane. The Anglican is your English. We've got werewolves and knigets, and the Daguth infantry starter set. Their specialty is stealth warfare, which is kind of cool, hiding in the forest and stuff. Yeah, Atalantes, they are slow and tanky basically, and that's your Atlanteans, and recommends the starter host there. The Brythoniad, which are, these guys are really cool. We'll have a look at the next PDF in a bit and you'll see what I mean. It's the Welsh. They've got fucking dragons. I mean, I don't really need to say too much more than that. Their ability of Mainstone Warriors to mix the role of warrior and the archer. Power of monstrous allies, especially the Drindrag. That's probably completely misspelled, but hey, you can destroy virtually any enemies because it's a fucking dragon. The Byzantine Empire. So that's your Romans, basically. Our friends over at the Effect Podcast would be very happy about that. So yeah, the Legionaris infantry starter host there. But they are friends of Infernus, and they've got the Demi-Legionary, which sounds to me like, and you can see it here, some sort of demonic stuff going on, which is great. You've got the Arain, which is your Irish, and they have, I can't remember what their specialty is, but I think it's like a druidic thing. So they have like these, yeah, you've got like these tree creatures and ogres and that sort of stuff. The Fomoraic, so Fomorians were, like from Irish folklore, they're basically kind of sea creatures that came onto land and started, destroying things and killing people. So in actual looking into history, it's kind of presumed that really that was an allegory for the Viking raids, the Vikings landing. But for the purposes of this, they're just some badass creatures from the black depths of the seas. And a polar bear. And they... brutal carnage is their specialty, so they're just full on fighty, which is really cool. Then you've got the Dukes. I think that's the is that the Danes? I can't recall. But they, no other kindred than the Dukes can reanimate the dead to fight again and again. So they're your necromancers, which is super cool. As far as I'm concerned, that's really fun. Then you've got the Chthonies, probably pronouncing that wrong, and they're another of those kind of mythological sets, a bit like the Atlanteans. Good on open, rough terrain within water features, so you can hide them in a fountain in your back garden. No one will expect them. Then they'll pop out and they'll piss all over your grass, and then they'll hide. No. But look at that. I mean, it's a great big goddamn alligator, crocodile, lizard thing. They're really cool, and they've got like effectively like lizard men and that sort of thing. In fact, you can see maybe just up at the top here, they talk about Gorgons as well. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking at here, and it's kind of why it's kind of in the same area as the Atlanteans, I would say. You've got the Norse. We know who the Norse are. They can field a great number of flying units and monsters because they're Vikings, and that's what Vikings have. Eusians. Eusians is like an undead, like a monstrous, quite a monstrous army. They are down in kind of Cornish and Bretons, basically, but they have the power to corrupt enemy warriors with disease and decay and field ferocious esoteric beasts found in no other kindred. I think these are probably my favourite, just because of things like this Chimera, which was one of the first models I saw on the table when we were at Salute, and that really drew my eye in. My other half, she picked up actually Euralia, which is this one up here, and she's currently painting that at the moment. If you're interested to see how that's coming along, why not drop into our Discord? The link is below, and pictures of that have been going up. I think there's only been a couple so far because it's only just been base coated, but they've been going up in the minis channel that we've got there, and we do share quite a lot of progress paintings of miniatures and that sort of thing, and scenery and stuff. So yeah, help us make that that channel even bigger. Come talk to us on Discord. You don't have to be a patron subscriber, although it helps. Just come and say hello. Yeah, so I think I would be inclined to get the Eusians myself. There's another idea of the map. So that's basically all the different races. What do you think? Was there one of those groups that really appealed to you? Were there several? Would you be torn? There's so much to choose from. This game has been going on for so long. If you actually go look at the history of Mierce Miniatures on Kickstarter, as I said, there's like 20 different campaigns. Now, not all of those are fulfilled yet, and that's something that you need to be aware of, is that if you... let me just do this. If you happen to back something that is... or select something that isn't yet available, you might be waiting a while for it to turn up. So it's probably worthwhile being very careful about where you direct that money. But my understanding is you make your pledge, that pledge then becomes your currency in the cart on the Mierce Miniatures web store. So then you can pick whatever you want, and basically they're treating all starter hosts as the same price. So I think that's really fair. Jason says they look cool, and they do. Which brings us on to the last PDF here. Now, this PDF is massive. It's 204 pages, 860 something megabytes. I tried to open it on my iPad, and the iPad shit the bed. So I had to download it, and then I tried to make it smaller. That didn't help. So the reason the iPad couldn't cope, by the way, is because it was trying to download it straight from the website. So it's worth grabbing this PDF if you're interested in the product, and it's worth looking ahead because it's got pretty much everything in here. But it's also worth bearing in mind that it's going to take a while to download. And if you're going to download it to a tablet or something, be careful how you do it. I would recommend doing the holding down and download linked file, that sort of approach, so that it goes into your files rather than it just trying to load up in the browser, because that's just going to end up in pain and misery, and you'll wait 20 minutes and then it will all fall over. Well, that's what happened to me. My iPad's not that old. It's pre-lockdown, so it's not brand new, but it's not that old. Jason says, it must be a Mac feature, not shitting the bed. Yeah. It's very expensive, though. It's like coffee luwak, you know. Get some fancy coffee out of it. Let's have a look through. I'm going to scroll pretty quickly through this because we are running out of... I say running out of time. We're not running out of time, but we've been talking for a while, and I don't want to bore the crap out of everyone. But I also think it's really important to see exactly what drew my eye to these products in the first place. Let's go. Right. Check this out, everyone. This is really nice. And I'm just going to make the window a little bit bigger. Is that better? That is a bit better. So that it looks better on the screen for everyone. There we go. Right. There's the contents. All of these different things. And the Bane Legions, basically the Bane Lords and the Bane Beasts, they're technically, I don't think they're technically part of Darklands. Maybe these are some of the things that were being made kind of before the rules were out. And we should talk about that as well. Some of the older models are at a slightly different scale to some of the newer models. I think they started out at 28 mil. So some of the very old infantry, for example, is 28 instead of 32. If you're not sure, the thing to do is to message Mierce Miniatures before you make your order to make sure that you get the scale, you get miniatures that are the right scale, if that bothers you. Everything will end up at 32 mil. Basically, they changed their rendering processes and the building processes, but I think they haven't kind of remastered everything yet. So we're talking about stuff that was originally mastered several years ago. So majority of stuff that's on their catalogs now is at 32 mil. But it's something to be mindful of. Let's run through this. God, there's so many pages. I'm just going to kind of rock and roll through it, but this is so cool. You can get this catalogue in print. It's £25, I think, possibly 30. There we go. So you've got the Albane. You've got these. I mean, look at these things. The mounts are just crazy. Nobles, 2 Cledenbagseg, vassals, Golgog the Goat Eater. Then we've got our beasts. And this is just the Scots. Then you've got the Anglican. These are your English guys. A very traditional kind of cavalry. And you've got werewolves. You've got your vassals and your mounts on a stag. This is really cool. I think this is beautiful on the, well, they call it a great heart. But yeah, basically, I think it's just fundamentally the quality of the stuff here is incredible. And when we first got that Euralia model, which I mentioned earlier, as I said again, if you want to see how that's turning out, have a look in our Discord. It didn't look great, to be honest with you. When we first opened it up, this was me, I thought, I'm looking at a creature caster that has really, really amazing fine points of detail, and I was a little underwhelmed. Then we threw a coat of paint on it, and the whole thing transformed, and you suddenly realise that with that specific beautiful model, less is more. And that it's not that the detail's not there. It's not that there's not enough intricacy. It's that there's exactly the right amount for that model. So I was wrong. And we've got a couple of other models that we've gotten from them that were beautiful as well. Sadly, there's nothing I can show you right now because some of those things just haven't been made yet. And as I said before many times during the show, we're moving house. So there's a lot of stuff basically in storage right now. Bears, the bearkin that we were talking about, and the werewolves and beasts, and it's just so incredible. The Atlanteans, and again, you've got your cavalry, you've got your vassals, and the beasts. I mean, look at this, it's Colossus, it's amazing. And yeah, people with wings. All sorts of awesome. Then, remember I said the Welsh have got dragons? Check that out. How cool is that? It's so, so awesome. Jason says, it's like Kingdom Death. The minis are cool, but I'd never play the game. Yeah, I think I'd be more inclined to play this than Kingdom Death Monster, to be honest with you. That's just me. I wasn't really too keen on the mechanics of Kingdom Death Monster. I think this is more likely that I would give it a go. Not as a regular player. I just don't have the time to commit to that sort of thing. But as a casual game, I'm more likely to get the minis to paint and to throw at people as RPGs. But I think I would be inclined to personally consider getting the starter set with the book, etc., so that you can play the game. And if other friends that you know have also bought minis for their games, role-playing games, for example, and they've got enough points to have an army, then you can go, screw it, let's just see what happens. Which is kind of what happened when we were playing Infinity. You know, that started from just, from my side at least, just wanting miniatures for Coriolis, because the Infinity miniatures, Corvus Belli Infinity is a sci-fi war game. Skirmish war game as well, and I thought the minis would be really good for getting Coriolis role-playing game to the table. That campaign unfortunately fell through, but the minis survived, and then we played it, and I've not played it very much. Other members of our channel have played it more, and all of our painted minis again have gone onto Discord, so you can kind of see them. But it's great to have that option to just go, do you know what, I've got a free afternoon, so let's play a game of something that only takes half an hour to set up, because you don't really need a lot of terrain, and the terrain's already there. You just got to throw it on the table, and you chuck some dice for an hour, and then you're done. You know, unlike a role-playing game where really you need to set aside an afternoon. These dragons are just incredible. You've got the Byzantines. I mean, this just reminds me of Diablo. Kroll. It's just so cool. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I'm ever going to be able to paint it that well. You've got Erebius, Demurian on foot, on Behemoth. Yeah, this guy's great. Vassals. Like I said, it's a big old file, so it takes a while to render. Beasts. And then we've got the lions, which are great, and the scorpions. The Irish, Arain. So you've got basically Ents and trolls, and that sort of stuff. And again, it's all really cool. Bolg, Svirbolg. The Pete Beast unit. If I was playing this, each one of these would be called Pete. It's like the idea that everyone's called Bob or Dave. They'd all be called Pete. Right, Pete. And then these guys, which are great. Oak beasts. The Fomorians, Fomoraic. I mean, that's basically as Cthulhu as you can get, which is great. It's not got wings, but, I'll let him off. And yeah, you've got your mounts. It's just really, really interesting, like some kind of rhino warrior there. And your vassals. And then you've got your larger units here. And the beasts. Which again, these beasts are just awesome. Look at that. Who doesn't want one of those at their table, provided that you have physical space for the damn thing. And these aren't cheap. You're looking probably 150, 200 quid, probably for the very largest ones. But they're not small. I mean, they're big minis. If you look at the 32 mils that we're seeing for scale, you're getting a lot for your money. And they're resin, and I believe they're, hand cast in the UK, I think. Which explains the cost. We've got the jutes here with the kind of insecty kind of stuff going on, and it's the undead, actually. Sorry, my apologies, the jutes. But yeah, we've also got kind of your insects and your stag beetles, elephant beetles, and centipedes and spiders. The spiders are awesome. Chthons, these are the kind of lizardy people I mentioned before. So you've got effectively what looks like a Gila monster there, and again, and you've got kind of various different things going on. You've got your gorgons and stuff as well. Look at this dude. Gux Kelleneers. That's amazing. So there is just so much. So much. I think it's probably fair that we stop going through these now. Let's nip back to the actual campaign. As I said, the rules are fairly straightforward if you want to play the war game. If you're wanting minis for your role-playing game, I don't think you can go wrong with these. They're not the cheapest. You do get what you pay for. The detail's incredible. It's Merchant Miniatures. There's 10 days left on the campaign. If you just want miniatures, you're not that interested in the rule books and stuff, throw £10 on just to get in there. Bump that up to whatever level you want to pay, and you can just basically get one of these starter bundles without the books. So you'll be looking at, I think it probably comes down at like 130 quid or something or maybe it's a little cheaper, like £100 or something for the host itself without actually having all the books and everything. We'll see when it goes to Pledge Manager, but it will be cheaper than just going through the web store because you've backed the campaign. If you want to do like I'd be tempted to actually get the rule book on its own, 60 quid. It's normally 50 quid just to buy the book, but it's a 60 quid with the board set as well, so you get a whole load of extra stuff. And yeah, if you get the starter bundle, you get that book, you get the boards, you get the Kickstart, which is handy. You get so you get all those PDFs that we showed in print, by the look of things. Second edition hardback, second edition summary board set. Those are the two things you get for £60 level as well. You get the Quick Play Guide, you get the Lands of Darkness Kindred Guide, you get a host, which is worth up to 130 quid. You get orders tokens, and you get a Wolf Dice pack, and that's 10 whites, 1 black, and 1 gold D5. Don't see D5s very often, unless you play Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's good value, honestly. I think it really is. As you can see, most people are going in for the rule book or for the miniatures. It's not a hugely funded campaign right now, but it's hit goal. And I think they deserve more love, really. I think that when I've seen them at Salute, their stall, their table was the most memorable out of all of them there for me. potentially with the exception of Creature Caster. Now, that's not to say that I think Creature Caster are better. Those are the two that really stood out for me. So I think, if my word counts for much, and it probably doesn't, that's something to consider. If you fancy some cool miniatures for your role-playing game, give them a look. I should point out, I know I've been gushing about this stuff. There's no relationship between me and Mierce Minatures. I did speak to Rob a little bit to get some more information over the last couple of days, but there's nothing about this that's sponsored or paid for in any way. I just think they're really cool, and I wanted to actually spend today giving them the credit that is due, because if I found it really hard to get this information into my head, then probably other newbies would as well. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, then please hit like. Please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. Please let us know what it's your favourite looking out of all of them. If you were to back the campaign, or if you were to rock up at a show and just buy a couple of models, from which of those kindred or realms would you most likely be drawn to? I'd be really interested to know that. Let us know in the comments. Come and talk to us on Discord. As I said, it's completely open. The link is down below. Also, please feel invited, of course, to consider supporting us on Patreon if you like what we're doing. That's not a requirement it's not a barrier to entry for what we're doing there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please hit like if you did. Please subscribe. We'll be back next week. I'm hoping to talk about next week. Here's a spoiler for you. Brindlewood Bay. That's launching next week. I really want to talk about that. Keep meaning to try and get that to the channel. We just haven't got there yet. Old Gods of Appalachia. Looks great. We talk about Devious Dungeons, Foreboding Forests. That's got Foreboding Forests coming out of its ears. So that is something that I'd be really keen to discuss. Hopefully we'll have some people back from various conventions, so maybe we'll get a couple of extra guests on the show, or some additional hosts. We'll probably also do a after party next week, which is where we hang out on Twitch after this show and just talk about whatever geek stuff's going on, including things like what we've actually received in the mail. I've actually had a few things show up in the mail over the last couple of weeks, but we haven't talked about them yet. So here's one of them. I haven't opened it yet, so I have opened it. I've done that. So it'd be good to actually talk about things that come through. Let's call it. So thank you one and all for joining. I hope you have a wonderful weekend if you're watching this live. And until next time, take care. Look after yourselves. Once again, a shout out to Tove for her amazing contributions to the role-playing community over, basically the lifespan of the role-playing community. So, Anders, we're thinking of you. Take care, everyone. Peace out, and I hope your dice rolls are way better than mine. Ciao.